The European bison has had a rough and rocky journey in the past centuries, going from being protected by royalty for several decades to having its species dwindle by a thread at the beginning of the 20th century. European bison were originally widespread throughout Europe in early historical times. However, their populations decreased dramatically with time until the species were almost decimated. By the 18th century, the Białowieża forest in Poland was the European bison's last refuge. Why did this happen? On the one hand, the European bison had legal protection in the Białowieża primeval forest. At the same time, the forest was safeguarded and enjoyed a special bison habitat status. Furthermore, the bison benefited from unintentional additional feeding due to the traditional utilization of the land with haymaking on forest meadows. The unfortunate outbreak of World War I brought the Białowieża primeval forest under German occupation, leading to the disastrous extirpation of European bison, mainly by troops, but also by local people. Parallel to this, extensive timber exploitation was taking place in the forest. The world was left with no wild European bison in the spring of April 1919, the last one having been killed either by poachers or by the direct consequences of World War I in the Białowieża primeval forest in Poland. The impressive former inhabitant of the Białowieża forest was absent for numerous years. Eventually, despite great effort, only 54 European bison were left around the world, all in captivity in private animal collections or zoological gardens. It was through some of the individuals of this fortunate group that the restoration program of the European bison was possible. At the end of the 20s, after several bison purchases from zoos, the restoration of the bison in the Białowieża forest began. 2 bulls were brought from Germany to the Białowieża reserve. Several years later, the first bison pedigree book was published with a count of 177 animals, becoming history's first detailed listing of a protected species. In 1952, after more than 20 years of captive breeding, the first captive-raised European bison were released into the wild in the Białowieża primeval forest in Poland. It wasn't until the end of the 50s that the first calf was born in the free-living population of European bison on the Polish side of the forest. By the beginning of the 70s, the population of bison in this area had already risen above 200 individuals and kept increasing. By the end of this decade, the world's population of European bison had risen to above 2,000. In the following 10 years, it increased to over 3,000 globally. Importantly, the population in the Białowieża forest had increased to 763 European bison by 2006, making it almost the same size as it had been at the beginning of the 20th century. European bison have been progressively distributed around Europe, with several bison translocations done around the continent to promote their conservation. And so, the journey of the European bison from the Białowieża forest continued onto other lands once again, and a very successful example of this was their arrival in the Netherlands. At the start of 2007, Dutch forest rangers visited the bison in Białowieża to check them out in their forest habitat, after 3 years of preparation for their translocation. By the following year, the first herd of 6 bison had arrived in Zuid-Kennemerland National Park, specifically to the Kransvlak area, where 220 hectares of heterogeneous coastal dune landscape awaited them. This area also held, amongst others, fallow deer, roe deer and rabbits. After some years, the first 4 calves in Kransvlak were born. The herd consisted of 10 European bison living in the Dutch dunes. At the same time, 5 Konik horses joined the adventure in Kransvlak, aiming for a more complete wild herbivore assemblage and increased natural processes. Both species' daily activities would be observed by researchers from various universities. There were new arrivals in Kransblack in 2010. 2 new bulls entered the area coming from other projects from within the Netherlands. With this, the probability of inbreeding was lowered and a more natural herd composition was achieved. But sometimes, even in very successful conservation efforts like this example, losses can occur which form part of the risks of translocation and adaptation of animals to other areas. Amongst other things, the past years improved the knowledge and experience of the bison under Dutch conditions. It was evident that bison in the Kransblack area did not need supplementary feeding, as they showed they were perfectly capable of finding their own food. Researchers studied the effects of the bison on the ecology of the Dutch dune landscapes, their interactions with the public and other grazers, as well as their natural food selection in this place. Hopes were high for bison counteracting afforestation and grasslands in the dunes, as well as bringing more dynamics to the terrain with their regular sandbaths. By 2013, the European bison in Kransblack had already quadrupled from the initial 6 translocated bison. The herd consisted of 24 individuals, with the majority of them being born in the project area. Part of the goals of the Kransblack project have always been to share knowledge nationally and internationally by being represented in numerous talks, events and congresses. Within 2013, the Kransblack project became a member of the European Rewilding Network. As the journey of the European bison had brought it from Poland to the Netherlands, it continued on to other lands once again in 2015. 2 bison bulls were translocated to other bison projects in Spain, in what officially constituted the first translocation in the history of the Kransblack project to other areas. The following year marked another big step in this journey, when Highland cattle were introduced in with the European bison, which had already been joined by Konik horses 6 years ago. This was the first time these 3 large herbivores were together in Kransblack. This posed quite a unique situation in the European context, as this mix of grazers had not been seen since historical times. The monitoring of the European bison and their surroundings has also led to interesting discoveries between the bison and other animals. For instance, the European bison can help songbirds during their breeding season by providing hair from their winter coats, which the birds use to make their nests. The Kransblack project has been a great success. Due to this, throughout the years, at least 3 additional nature areas where European bison roam have begun in the Netherlands. This has had a ripple effect by inspiring not only national projects, but also served as an influence for the international introductions of the species. If all of this has been possible here, imagine how much more can be done through conservation efforts like Kransblack. Let's draw inspiration from it to create a more natural and biologically diverse future.